Greetings, Sanbonani, Molweni, Dumelang, Macheroni. We would like to pass our greetings to the people who keep on watching the channel, who keep on liking, subscribing to the channel, and also for those who keep on sharing their comments and some of their critiques with regards to the material that we put out there. Please also don't forget, if there's those ones who are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe and like and comment on our videos. I will very much appreciate you doing that for this channel, the Nubian Exodus. We greet you in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And we are back again, and we want to share with you a topic, and these topics that we do, and the topic that I will be doing today is relevant for today's world, for today's South Africa, for today's Africa, because normally, you have people who tend to think that what happened in the past, stays there in the past. It no longer has an effect, on our current status and sort of like for our future. Today, I want to share on a topic regarding which I will title the protesters against Protestantism. The protesters against Protestantism. We all know of the Protestant Reformation, which started in Europe in under the brilliant Martin Luther in 1517, where he nailed the 95 Theses in Wittenberg door, where he was protesting against the abuse, the Roman Catholic abuse of the Christian faith for their own selfish, greed, selfish reasons. They were using theology, they were using the Christian religion to exploit, the people of Europe at that time. And if we still remember, during in that period which they call the Dark Ages, where the church was so powerful at that time, everything revolved around the Roman Catholic Church, and that tremendous power, that absolute power that the church had over the common man in Europe, caused them in the long run to become a very corrupt church. And then as nationalism was growing in Europe prior to the 1500s, where people wanted to break free from the papal hold over their country, that giving birth to nationalism and the current states in Europe. In the 1500s, Luther came on the scene, with the theological reasons for fighting the Roman Catholic Church. And he gave birth, or he led a very big movement that altered the whole region of Europe, and even changed, how Europe was perceived, and usher in, modernism. So the Protestant Reformation, the people who led that movement were then later on, called protesters, because they protested against, papal authority. And that was fine, and that was good, and that was excellent, and that was brilliant, because what the Roman Catholic Church was doing was in fact wrong. Their perversion of the Christian faith, so that it can yield for them gain, selfish gains, was in fact anti-Christian. And those blasphemous claims that the Pope made, that he's the vicar of Christ on earth, a representative, of Christ on earth, demanding loyalty, demanding, people to bow down to him. Even kings, leaders, they had to bow down to the papal authority. That was wrong, and that had nothing to do with Christianity. And with Luther coming on the scene, he did a very good job in terms of breaking away, and even leading other people to break away from that religious enslavement. Now, this is all fine and good, but when you then begin to look at the Protestant Reformation in Africa, you begin to see a different picture. You begin to see how a person who has been persecuted, a person who has suffered brutality, in the hands of those who had power, then turning to be the very same persecutor and brutalizer of other people. The case of the Protestant Reformation in Africa is the case of the persecutor turning to be the persecuted, turning to be the persecutor. In the late 1800s in South Africa, within the Protestant Reformation, what you had was the fact that, you had Martin Luther, who was the catalyst, a very brilliant man. You had men such as Zwingli, who was also on the other side working, towards breaking away from the Roman Catholics, and he was in fact expounding many of the views that Martin Luther also expounded. And then later on you had John Calvin. These are the most prominent figures, in the early Protestantism in Europe. When you then come to South Africa in the late 1800s, you had a movement which was called the Ethiopianism. Ethiopianism was a movement which was started in South Africa. We do have a video where we dealt with that. And this movement started in the late 1800s. Three prominent figures that are very important for us to know. First is Nehemiah Tile. The second one was Joseph Khanyane Napo. And the third one was Mangena Mukoni. These are the three prominent guys. Just like within the Protestant Reformation in Europe, you have Luther, you have Zwingli, you have Calvin. We have here Tile, we have Napo, we have Mukoni. These were the early pioneers of the Ethiopianism movement, which started in South Africa in the late 1800s. And it started within the Protestant churches. It started within the Anglican Church, and it started within the Wesleyan Church. These three figures broke away from these denomination, Anglican and Wesleyan, because of what? Because of the treatment that the natives in South Africa suffered at the hands of these Protestants. It started as a result of the formerly persecuted turning persecutor, and then now these brothers who led, the Ethiopianism movement in South Africa, which in fact influenced the whole African continent, broke away from these Protestant denominations, the Anglicans and the Wesleyans. These were some of the, the Anglicans and the Wesleyan were very prominent and very powerful here in South Africa. They were racist. They were paternalistic. They were working with the colonialist to destroy, undermine, native leadership. Some of them worked as spies. Some of them were in cahoots with imperialists, such as the bishop, Dr. Knight Bruce, was the first bishop in Matebeleland. He was given that position by Cecil Rhodes, one of the most wicked imperialists who has ever walked the Southern African region. He bribed this Anglican bishop with this position. And then you had people such as the Moffat, who was working closely with Lobengula. His father also was working with Mzilikazi. They were working as spies, that go in between the native leadership and the imperialists, and they were sort of like reporting the movements of the native people to the imperialists, so that the imperialists can plan, ways in which to bring about the subjugation of the natives. That was done largely by these Protestant reformations, Protestant churches. Now, people such as Tile, Napo, Mukoni, saw all of this. They witnessed the racism, they witnessed the segregation, they witnessed the paternalistic tendency, they witnessed the injustice that these Protestant churches did. You even have later on Bantu Biko, who also was working within these churches, later on writing essays about these white liberals who were within these Protestant churches and how they sort of like undermine and treated black people. So, but earlier on, the leaders of this Ethiopianism movement saw this, and then they did what? They broke away from these missionary churches, these Protestant missionary churches, and they protested against these missionaries, and they went on, to start their own churches. Now we have what we call African indigenous churches, which is in fact as a result of these brothers who protested against this formerly persecuted, turning persecutor, the Protestant Reformation. And the Protestant Reformation in the African continent has been, disastrous, if I can say. In the same way, even the Catholics, they've been equally the same, to such an extent that I get surprised when I see, the Protestant in South Africa, they even call themselves, the Protestant in South Africa and in Africa, trying to act as if, they are the good guys. It is only the Roman Catholics who are the wicked guys. It is only the Roman Catholics who have to be pushed aside. They then want us to inherit, the hostility against the Roman Catholics, and sort of like make it our own, as if it is also our own hostility. And we have nothing to do that. Both these two movements have treated us poorly. Both these two movements have been racist towards us as native. They have segregated us. They have treated us unfairly. They have partook, in our brutalization in the hands of imperialism and colonialism. So, and it's a sad thing that now, when you talk about African indigenous churches, when you talk about Ethiopianism, many people do not know, many people in South Africa, many people in the continent do not know much or about the history of this type of people, but they do know about the Catholics, they do know about the Protestant Reformation, which was in fact part and parcel of their destruction and brutalization in the hands of imperialism and colonialism. So now I think it's time in South Africa and also in Africa to begin to look at these heroes of ours, to never forget the work that they did, to build upon what they've done. Because right now, with Europeans, missionaries coming here, they are literally coming still, having the very same attitudes that their previous ancestors had, and they you still find even today, Africans, natives, in South Africa, complaining about the unfair treatment that they are receiving in these missionary dominated churches. You still haven't had a black pope since the Roman Catholic Church was established. You have not, even today, you still do not have a black pope, even though the African continent is contributing millions of members to the Roman Catholic Church. You still have that discrimination, even within the Protestant circles. You still have these discrimination, segregations that are still taking place. You can look at also even in America, within the Southern Baptist Convention, you still have the very same thing. Even here in South Africa, within the Baptist Union and Baptist Convention, you still have the very same problems, where people are still fighting, in some of these churches, within their hierarchy. At the top of their hierarchy, you still find majority being white people, who are in fact are presiding over the natives. And you find that there's also unfair treatment when it comes to the issue of pay. You still have black leaders who are treated as boys. You still have these paternalistic attitudes where you have these men who are well educated, these men who have wives, who have children, who are upright men, still being treated as if they are little boys, as if they are small. They have to be sent there, they have to be sent there. This type of discrimination, you still have those type of people. You still have those type of accidents still taking place. So I think it is time now for I think the natives in Africa, that if they do not fully control these missionary dominated churches, they will run into trouble where now they will be imposing these Western values, which are in hindrance to the spread of the gospel in Africa. If they do not fully control these missionary churches, which are here in South Africa, to such an extent that I still do not understand why do you have to have churches being called Anglican, England State Church, Wesleyan, by men who are far away, who are keeping their legacy alive here in Africa. Why can't we take these churches and then allow them to be called by names which are relevant to the people that they are ministering in? So we are in fact helping to maintain Western legacy at our own expense, and this is something that men such as Tile, Napo, Mukoni wanted to prevent. They went back to the Bible and they identified themselves from the biblical perspective as the Ethiopians, based on Psalm 68, where it talks about that Ethiopia will one day stretch out her hands unto God. You see, that was, a prophecy about submission, the African continent submitting to the triune God. They define themselves in light of that biblical scripture. And therefore, now you keep, the legacy, you keep the biblical memory alive, not the Western legacy alive at the expense of the African continent, at the expense of the African people. So these protesters against Protestantism did an excellent job in South Africa. They also impacted even the political environment because of what they started. You see, we dealt with this issue in our video on whether Africanization is a threat. Africanization was born out of the work of these guys, and it did an excellent job, you know, in the entire African continent. Therefore, it is very important that we look back and look at the legacy of this man and build on what they left for us, instead of simply forgetting, you know, the work and the sweat of our ancestors. So this video is an attempt for the Christian church in Africa to, you know, try to do better. Let us do better, you know. Let us not be people who are continuously dependent. You know, we are dependent on Europeans for theology, as if God did not give us, you know, His Spirit, and He did not give us minds to think. We are dependent even economically, you know, from Europeans. We tend to be so dependent, as if, you know, God did not give us, you know, wisdom, did not give us, you know, knowledge. You know, He did not. It is as if God did not create us in His own image. You know, we enjoy, you know, to take things, you know, that are already packaged for us, instead of building things from the root. You know, because now we can't be complaining, you know, when we experience this racism and all of these kinds, you know, from people who will tell you that, Pela, you know, lento le yabo, and it's true, it's theirs, you know, and so if they close doors for you and you cry, you know, why don't you go and start your own things? You have your own ancestors who have sweat, who have worked, you know, to build something for you. Go there and then, you know, add, you know, on what they've built for you. And then in that way, even God is going to bless you. Even the gospel is going to be a blessing, you know, in South Africa and in the entire African continent. I hope this video blesses you, and I hope it causes, you know, something, you know, in you to awake. You know, I hope it causes you to really rethink, you know, all of these things, and really know that uNkulunkulu cares for this continent. uNkulunkulu cares for South Africa, and uNkulunkulu, He wants us to be able, you know, to express His revelation in our own native, you know, native expressions, you know. So this is very important, because even in heaven we're going to be expressing, you know, the praise to God, you know, in our own languages, you know. So uNkulunkulu created a diversity, so He wants the church to have a diversity. Let us stop this thing of allowing, you know, European imposition in the name of Protestantism, as if, you know, we also have to be Protestant. You know, Tina, we have a problem with both Catholics and Protestant. None of the two is any better, because both of them, when they came here in Africa, they oppressed us, they were racist, they were unjust, and they were paternalistic towards us, and they made sure that they are working with the colonialist to suppress, you know, aspirations and desires. So let us do better. This is a plea for us to let us do better. Let us read the Bible. Even right now, you know, we are still experiencing issues in our translations, you know, biblical translations. You know, we are still experiencing issues in, you know, having to build the theological systems that are relevant for our own people that we are ministering the gospel to. Instead, we already want to take this already packaged, Eurocentric theologies and systems, and they become so irrelevant within the native context, and they become a hindrance to the gospel. So let us do better. I hope this video blesses you. I hope you be blessed. Please leave your comments, your critique if you have them, and I hope you stay blessed. Bye bye.